Welcome back. We are just 1 week away from the September 30th government shutdown deadline. House and Senate leaders have reached a bipartisan agreement to fund the government through December 20th. This continuing resolution includes $231 million for the U.S. Secret Service, with conditions that the agency cooperate with congressional investigations after two failed assassination attempts against former President Trump. It does not include the SAVE Act, which, of course, President Trump supported. This is a measure that would help secure upcoming elections by preventing non-citizens from voting, which is illegal, by the way. The House is expected to vote on this bill as early as Wednesday. Joining me now is South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace, member of the House Oversight, Armed Services, and Veterans Affairs Committees. Congresswoman, good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here. What is the fate of this bill to ensure that we don't have a government shutdown and give more funding and resources to Secret Service?
Well, I believe this bill will pass. We do this almost every year. We have a short-term spending measure until December, and then in December there will be an omnibus or a larger continuing resolution to continue funding at record levels and not address the excessive spending by the federal government. This is just business as usual in Washington. I expect it to pass this week, and then we'll go on to December. We'll spend more than ever, and we'll do an omnibus or another CR for next year, I would imagine, at the end of the year.
Well, I mean, this is what you've been complaining about, right? Too many CRs, time after time after time. I mean, are you waiting, and you and your colleagues, are you waiting in hopes that President Trump takes the helm and then you'll decide on spending for 2025 after that? Is that why you're doing such a short-term bill till December 20th?
That's the best case scenario, is that Trump gets reelected to the White House and can direct us and at the spending levels. We have to cut spending. I mean, I just had a candidate forum last night, and I listened to voters. People are sick and tired of the government having a blank check, basically, and not taking care of business. As you mentioned, we throw more money at more problems like the Secret Service, who has not cooperated with Congress at all since the attempted assassination attempt, both of them, by the way. I don't have a lot of faith without some strings attached and making sure that we keep him protected, for example. What are we going to do to stop funding NGOs that are helping illegals cross the southern border? What are we doing to shut down the border? And so when you think about the way that we waste our taxpayer dollars right now, the American people are sick of it. I hope and I pray that Donald Trump is reelected, that we actually cut spending, that we preserve Social Security, et cetera, because in 10 years, that's going to be insolvent. We aren't doing anything right now to solve America's fiscal problems.
Well, I want to get your take on how the Secret Service can best use this money in protecting President Trump and other candidates. I spoke with Eric Prince yesterday. He is the founder of Blackwater, and he had an idea in terms of protecting President Trump. I want to get your take on it. Watch this.
There's a lot of chatter about more help is needed, and that's absolutely for sure. Trying to integrate private security into that would be exceedingly difficult, especially for the private guys. I recommend that JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command, has Delta Force and SEAL Team 6, the two most elite commando units in the world. They have a lot of capacity. There's precedent. They could put 10 guys on the detail and make it happen.
What do you think, Congresswoman?
Well, I would be all in for everything to keep Donald Trump safe. If having JSOC soldiers would be helpful, I would support it. I also believe better training for these individuals. We can't allow this to continue to happen. I am very fearful for him and his family, his children and grandchildren, because of what they're up against right now. And so I think we need to make sure that he has all the resources he needs to be safe.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Trump announced a new border policy plan during a rally in Wilmington, North Carolina on Saturday night. Watch this.
I'm announcing a new plan to end all sanctuary cities in North Carolina and all across our country. No more sanctuary cities.
The Texas Department of Public Safety also said that state troopers encountered 36 illegal migrants near the southern border on Friday, which included some special interest migrants from Turkey, Pakistan, India, and Vietnam. The group from Turkey told troopers that they paid $12,000 a head to cross into the U.S. illegally in an effort to meet the so-called sponsor that is waiting for them in New Jersey, Congresswoman. It's unbelievable that this is all so planned out, and the drug cartels are accepting $12,000 a head from these folks to come in illegally. Nothing has changed.
Well, just a few years ago, Well, I mean, just a few years ago, it was only $8,000 across the southern border. So it looks like inflation has hit the criminal cartels. I mean, look, the Biden-Harris administration, the wide open borders, they are funding criminal cartels in Mexico and South America. They are allowing this to happen by pushing back and reversing all of Donald Trump's border policies that kept our country safe. There are hundreds of terrorists on the terrorist watch list that have come across the southern border. We are less safe than ever because of it. And again, another reason why we must re-elect Donald Trump to keep our country safe.
Yeah, it's Liz Peek, jump in here. I believe it's 350 people apprehended at the border in the last 3.5 years who were actually on the terrorist watch list, Liz.
So
Yes,
I think Trump is right that we have to cut down on the attractions that bring people across the border, Maria. And Representative Mace, I'm interested, and one of your colleagues introduced a bill last year basically banning sanctuary cities. And this does have to go through Congress, I believe. My question to you is, was that bill ever picked up? What kind of support would there be for a bill that basically gets rid of one of the great enticements for criminals and so forth coming into our country who know they will be protected in New York or San Francisco from ICE, from deportation, which I think is a horror.
It is a horror, and I would support any legislation that would ban sanctuary cities. To my knowledge, it has not gotten picked up. It has not had a vote in the House of Representatives, and I agree we need to eliminate every single incentive that allows these individuals to be emboldened and come across our country illegally, to include defunding the NGOs that are telling them how to get to the southern border, how to cross into it, and how to vote. That has to stop.
Unbelievable. Meanwhile, what about your bill? I mean, your Violence Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act passed in the House last week. Great idea, Congresswoman. The bill aims to protect women and girls by ensuring illegal migrants who are convicted of or admit to sex offenses or domestic violence are deported or deemed inadmissible to the United States. And now it moves to the Senate, but in the House you had 158 Democrats voting against it. Can you explain to us why 158 Democrats voted against a bill to protect women and girls from sexual abuse?
Right. Their motto is protect all women except for American women and girls. I can't explain it. It doesn't make any sense. 158 Democrats, 158 allies of Kamala Harris voted against deporting illegal aliens who rape our women, who are pedophiles, and who have murdered our women and girls. And it's wrong. And I was at a candidate forum last night. And when I brought up my Violence Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act that overwhelmingly passed the House last week, there were people laughing. When the far left, when the radical left shows you who they are, we need to believe them. They are out for Looney Tunes. They don't care about American women and girls. This was important legislation. These people have got to go. We're talking about the worst of the worst, and they're laughing about it. This is not funny. It's not funny.
No, it isn't. Congresswoman, thank you. We'll be following your work. We appreciate your time this morning. Nancy Mace this morning.
Thank you, Maria.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.